It's 7 a.m. The house is quiet except for one sound, the soft rustle of feathers as your budgie hops down to his food bowl. The same bowl you filled last night, the same seeds he's eaten 1,000 times before. You smile. He looks fine. He's chirping. He's eating. But somewhere inside that tiny body, something has been happening for months, maybe years, and you have never noticed it. Not because you weren't paying attention, not because you don't love him, but because the thing that is slowly hurting your budgie doesn't look like danger at all. It looks like breakfast. It looks like the exact bowl you refill every single day, out of habit, out of love, out of the belief that if he's still eating it, it must be fine. This is not a video about neglect. This is a video about the opposite, about owners who do everything right and still, without ever knowing it, become the quiet reason their bird's life gets shorter. Somewhere between that bag of seeds in this bowl, something got lost in translation, and no one ever told you. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you will never look at that food bowl the same way again. Here's what almost nobody tells new budgie owners. A bird can look completely healthy right up until the moment it isn't. Budgies are prey animals. In the wild, showing weakness means becoming lunch for a hawk. So evolution wired them to hide sickness, to hide hunger, to hide pain, right up until the very last stage, when it's often too late to reverse. That means the signs you're waiting for, a fluffed-up bird, a quiet bird, a bird that stops eating, are not early warnings, they're final warnings. The real damage happened weeks, sometimes months, before you ever noticed anything wrong. Most owners assume that if their budgie is eating enthusiastically, the diet must be working. But eating enthusiastically and eating correctly are two completely different things. A budgie can devour its bowl every single day and still be quietly, slowly starving, not from too little food, but from the wrong food, fed the wrong way at the wrong time. And the strange part, the mistakes that cause this aren't rare or exotic. They're sitting in almost every household with a pet bird right now, disguised as an ordinary routine. They don't look like danger. They look like a full food bowl. They look like a treat shared out of affection. They look exactly like what a caring, attentive owner would do, which is precisely why they've gone unnoticed for so long, by so many people, for so many years. Here's why this matters more than almost anything else you'll do for your bird. Budgies in human homes often live only 5 to 8 years. But budgies with the right diet, free from the mistakes we're about to uncover, have been documented living well past 15. That's not a small difference. That's an entire second lifetime, quietly taken away, not by illness, not by accident, but by feeding habits that seemed completely normal. If you've ever lost a budgie earlier than expected and wondered why, or if you're feeding one right now and want to make sure you're not repeating an invisible mistake, what you're about to hear may be the most important stretch of time you spend on this topic all year. Because once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them, and neither can your bird's future. Somewhere between the bag of seeds in your cupboard and the bowl sitting in that cage right now, there is a decision waiting to be made differently, and you're about to find out exactly where it is. Before we go further, if you care about the quiet, hidden side of animal care, the things nobody warns you about until it's too late, this channel exists for exactly that. Consider following along because we're about to walk through 8 specific mistakes, and I promise at least one of them is happening in your home right now. Walk into almost any pet store and you'll find the same product, a colorful bag of seed mix, sunflower, millet, oats, all blended together, marketed with a picture of a happy, glowing budgie on the front. It feels like the obvious choice. It's what budgies have always eaten. It's cheap, it's convenient, and this is the trap. Budgies genuinely love it. But here's what that bag doesn't tell you. Seeds, especially sunflower and safflower, are extremely high in fat and painfully low in the vitamins, calcium, and amino acids a budgie's body actually needs to function. In the wild, seeds are a seasonal food, eaten alongside dozens of other plants, grasses, and insects. In your home, for many birds, seeds become the entire diet, every meal, every day, for years. Picture it from the bird's side. Each seed is a tiny reward, a burst of fat and flavor. Your budgie doesn't crack open a sunflower seed and think, this lacks vitamin A. It just tastes good. So he eats it and eats it again and slowly, silently selects out anything healthier sitting beside it in the bowl. Here's the detail almost nobody catches, even when owners try to balance the diet by adding pellets or vegetables into the same bowl. Most budgies will simply sift through the mix with their beak, toss the healthy pieces onto the cage floor, and eat only the seeds underneath. The bowl looks full, the bird looks satisfied, but the actual nutrition being consumed could be a fraction of what it appears to be. This single habit, an all-seed diet, is considered by avian veterinarians to be one of the leading contributors to fatty liver disease, obesity, and shortened lifespan in pet budgies. Fat accumulates around the liver slowly, invisibly, with no outward symptom for months. There's no cough, no limp, no obvious sign. The bird simply carries a growing weight inside it that nobody can see from outside the cage bars. And it starts so innocently. It starts with a bag that says, right on the front, complete nutrition. It starts with a checkout aisle decision made in under 10 seconds based on nothing more than a smiling cartoon bird on the packaging and a price tag that seems reasonable. Nobody in that moment is thinking about liver tissue or amino acid ratios. They're thinking simply, this is bird food and my bird is a bird. That single understandable assumption is where the entire chain of harm quietly begins. Here's a habit almost every owner shares, completely without realizing it, filling the food bowl once, maybe topping it off once a day, and assuming that as long as there's food visible, the bird is fine. But watch closely, actually watch. The next time your budgie eats from a full bowl of seed mix, he isn't eating everything in there. He's doing something called hulling. He picks up a seed, cracks the shell with his beak, eats the tiny kernel inside, and drops the empty husks right back into the bowl. Over the course of a day, those empty husks pile up, layer after layer, sitting directly on top of the seeds that are still whole and edible. From above, from your eyes, glancing down for 2 seconds before you leave for work, the bowl looks completely full. It isn't. Underneath that top layer of husks, there may be almost nothing left to eat. This is one of the most common and most invisible mistakes in budgie care. A bird can technically have a full bowl and be running low on real food for hours, sometimes an entire day, without the owner ever knowing because nobody taught them to blow across the surface of the bowl or run their fingers through it to check what's actually underneath. For a bird with the fast metabolism of a budgie, one that can begin showing signs of starvation within 24 to 48 hours of insufficient intake, this isn't a minor oversight. It's a silent gap that repeats week after week, invisible the entire time. Think about the sound of it. The soft, papery rustle of a beak sifting through husks isn't the sound of a bird eating well. It's often the sound of a bird searching over and over through material it has already stripped of nutrition, hoping to find something it already finished hours earlier. To your ears, from across the room, it sounds exactly the same as contented eating. That's the cruelty of this particular mistake. It doesn't announce itself. It just quietly repeats bowl after bowl, day after day, hiding behind a sound that seems perfectly normal. Now here's where good intentions turn dangerous. Say an owner finally learns about the seed mix problem. They read an article, they watch a video, and they decide, today, we switch to a healthy pellet diet. It sounds like the responsible move. It often becomes a crisis. Budgies are famously stubborn about new foods, a trait called neophobia, a built-in fear of anything unfamiliar. In the wild, this instinct protects them from eating something toxic. In your home, it means a bird can look directly at a bowl of new, healthier pellets and simply refuse to recognize it as food at all. Picture the scene. The old seed bowl is removed, replaced entirely with pellets. The budgie approaches, tilts his head, inspects this strange new material, and walks away. He waits. He waits some more. Because in his mind, food will surely reappear eventually, the way it always has. Except this time, it doesn't. And because owners don't know this instinct exists, a shift meant to save the bird's life can, within days, become dangerous in the opposite direction, as the budgie simply refuses to eat enough of anything. The tragic irony is that the safest, most loving choice done carelessly becomes just as harmful as the mistake it was meant to fix. What should have been a slow transition, pellets mixed gradually into the seed over 2 or 3 weeks, instead becomes an abrupt, frightening switch that the bird's instincts are not built to handle. There's a particular kind of silence that fills a home during this stretch of days, a budgie perched motionless above an untouched bowl, feathers slightly puffed, watching, waiting, refusing to move towards something his body may desperately need. An owner, checking in every few hours, sees a bird that looks calm, maybe even a little sleepy, and has no idea that calm is often the last visible stage before real danger. By the time visible weakness appears, the bird may have already gone through several days of inadequate intake, and for an animal this small, several days is not a small margin. It can be the entire margin that exists. Every owner wants to bond with their bird, and sharing food feels like the most natural way to do it. A piece of toast at breakfast, a sliver of avocado on the cutting board, a few grains of rice from dinner. These moments feel warm. They feel like connection. And that's exactly what makes them dangerous, because some of the most common human foods shared with budgies are quietly toxic to them, and the damage doesn't show up right away. Avocado contains a compound called persin, which is essentially harmless to humans but can cause heart damage and respiratory distress in birds, sometimes from a single bite. Chocolate contains theobromine, which a budgie's tiny body cannot break down the way ours can. Even something as innocent as the salt on a cracker can throw off a bird's fluid balance in a way that would take an entire bag of chips to affect a human. Here's the part that makes this mistake so insidious. Budgies are small. A quantity of toxic food that would be a rounding error for a human, one crumb, one lick, one bite, can represent a significant percentage of a budgie's entire body weight. What feels like a harmless nibble on our end can be, on their end, a genuine toxic dose. And because the effects are often gradual, a slightly slower metabolism, a slightly weaker heart, cumulative strain over months, there's rarely a single dramatic moment that reveals what happened. Just a bird that seems, over time, a little less resilient than it should be. Picture the scene again, but slower this time. A hand reaches toward the cage with a piece of toast, warm from the toaster, torn into a small, careful piece. The budgie steps forward eagerly, takes it, and the owner smiles. This is bonding. This is trust. This is exactly what a loving pet relationship is supposed to look like. Nothing about that moment feels dangerous. Nothing about it should, on the surface. But multiply that single shared bite by hundreds of mornings across several years, each one seemingly harmless on its own, and the cumulative weight becomes something entirely different from what either the owner or the bird ever intended. There's one more piece almost every feeding routine gets wrong, and it has nothing to do with what's in the bowl. It's about what's missing from the cage entirely. Female budgies in particular have an enormous biological demand for calcium, largely because their bodies are built to be ready to lay eggs at almost any time, bonded mate or not. Without consistent calcium intake, a hen's body will begin pulling calcium from her own bones to compensate. A slow, invisible depletion that can eventually lead to a life-threatening condition called egg binding, where a shellless or malformed egg becomes stuck inside her body. Most owners have never even considered this because it feels disconnected from feeding at all. It seems like a breeding problem, not a diet problem. But a mineral block or a cuttlebone sitting untouched in the corner of a cage, the thing most owners buy once and forget about, is often the single missing piece keeping a budgie's skeletal system, muscle function, and reproductive health intact. And here's the quiet tragedy. Symptoms of calcium deficiency, weakness, tremors, soft bones often look identical to simple old age or low energy, so owners rarely connect the dots. The bird just seems to be declining for no clear reason, and the real cause sits unnoticed, unreplenished, in the corner of the cage the entire time. There's something almost unbearable about how ordinary this object looks. A small, pale, chalky block clipped to the cage bars, sold for a few coins at any pet store. So unremarkable that most owners install it once during setup and never think about it again. They don't notice whether it's been touched. They don't notice the layer of dust settling across its surface month after month, a quiet indicator that it hasn't been used at all. It simply becomes part of the cage's furniture, present but forgotten, while the very deficiency it exists to prevent builds slowly in the dark, invisible interior of a bird's bones. By now, a pattern should be forming in your mind, and it's not a comfortable one. None of these 5 mistakes involve cruelty. None of them involve ignorance in the way we usually picture it. Every single one is committed by owners who are trying their best, following the instructions on the bag, repeating the habits they were taught, offering food out of love. And that's exactly what makes this so unsettling. If harm only came from obvious neglect, it would be easy to avoid. But when harm comes disguised as routine, as a full bowl, a shared snack, a well-meaning switch, it becomes almost impossible to catch without someone pointing directly at it. So here's the question worth sitting with. If 5 separate habits, each one individually normal, can each quietly work against a budgie's health? What happens when they combine? What happens when a bird is living through all 5 at once, every single day for years? Think about how many cages right now in houses on your street, in apartments across your city, contain exactly this combination. A seed-only bowl, husks piled on top, a mineral block gathering dust in the corner, and a hand occasionally reaching in with a piece of toast. Multiply that by the number of budgies purchased every single year, and what you're looking at isn't a rare misfortune happening to a few unlucky owners. It's a pattern, repeating quietly, across an enormous number of homes, almost none of whom have any idea it's happening at all. Here is the realization that changes everything. None of these 5 mistakes act alone. They stack. A budgie eating only seeds is already nutritionally compromised. That same budgie, digging through husk-covered bowls, is eating even less real food than it appears. That same budgie, resistant to dietary change because of neophobia, stays trapped in that pattern for years, never transitioning to something better. That same budgie, given treats meant as love, absorbs slow, cumulative toxic strain on top of an already fragile system. And that same budgie, if she's a hen, is quietly draining her own skeleton of calcium the entire time, with no mineral source in sight to stop it. Individually, each mistake might shave a small amount off a lifespan. Together, compounding silently, year after year, they explain something that has haunted budgie owners for generations. Why a bird that seemed perfectly fine only days earlier can decline so suddenly it feels like it came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. It came from breakfast. It came from love, expressed in exactly the wrong shape for years, disguised as ordinary care. This is the moment where the whole picture finally snaps into focus. Not one villain, not one dramatic act of neglect, but 5 quiet, ordinary decisions made by a caring owner, none of them meant to hurt anything, all of them stacking silently on top of each other until the weight became too much for a small, fragile body to carry. That's what makes this the real climax of the story, not a single shocking cause, but the slow, invisible arithmetic of everyday habits, adding up in the dark, one unremarkable day at a time. Go back to that morning, 7 a.m., the quiet house, the soft rustle of feathers as your budgie hops down to the same bowl he's eaten from 1,000 times. He still looks fine. He's still chirping. He's still eating. But now you see the bowl differently. You see the husks hiding what's really left underneath. You see the seed mix for what it actually is. You see the mineral block untouched in the corner. You understand now that he's eating was never the same thing as he's thriving, and that the difference between those 2 words can be measured in years of his life. This was never a story about a careless owner. It was a story about how easily love can be misdirected when nobody tells you where to aim it. Every single mistake we walk through today came from someone who checked the bowl, who wanted their bird to be happy, who reached in with a treat because sharing felt like affection, not harm. Now you know, and knowing changes what happens next. It means the next bag you buy gets read differently. It means the next bowl gets checked by hand, not just by glance. It means that small chalky block on the cage bars finally gets noticed again. Small corrections, made consistently, are the entire difference between a story that ends in silence and one that stretches on, healthy and loud with chirping, for years longer than anyone expected. And knowing is the only thing that turns a silent saboteur back into what that bowl was always supposed to be, a source of life, not a slow, quiet cost. So tell me honestly, before this video, which one of these 5 mistakes were you making without even knowing it? Type the number below. I read every single one.